Hi, and welcome to another podcast episode here at The Wealthy Ironworker. Today's podcast episode is an exciting one, at least for me, because we will be covering the most visited and read article that's on the website, the pros and cons of the skilled trades. We do it justice. It's a lengthy one, and rightly so. It's got about 5,200 words on the website side of things. But we take a fairly deep dive into looking at the pros and the cons, whether they're real and or perceived by people from a stigma or an association that people unfairly have with it. So come on in the studio as we talk about this very important and complex, nuanced topic. All right, well, let us now dive into what we start off with the pros. We're going to start off with the pros of the trade. So we'll follow up with the cons, but we'll get started with the pros. And for a little bit of caveat, I'm probably going to mention this in the introduction, but just to reinforce that fact, this is the most read article by far on the website. It is. When I look at the data, I can routinely see the number of people who check it out. It's always at the top of the articles, and for good reason. I mean, it's a pretty substantive article, too. It's got, I think, over 5,000 words. So it's pretty lengthy as well. That drives the traffic as far as Google's concerned, and that allows them then to kind of drive all the traffic to the website. But we start off with the pros in this particular podcast episode, which will probably find its way as a video onto the article. And the first one is supply and demand. Now, I've kind of dealt with this a little bit in previous podcast episodes when I started to talk about the fact that there's a stigma against those of us in the trades and the trades themselves. And with that stigma, and there's generational differences as well. There's generational things that have taken place. But all of that has come together for a very complex and nuanced problem. And what it has effectively created is a supply and demand issue in the skilled trades. There is a shortage. Not to belay the point, but right now the number that's usually been tossed around is about 500,000 shortage of skilled trades workers. In another decade or by 2030, depending on how you want to look at it, starting at 2020 or today, we're talking about 2 to 3 million. And the major reason why is because the baby boomers, at least half of them have already retired. And as we, systematically go through their time and they're going to retire, they're going to leave vacancies, and they're taking with them decades of experience in whatever field they happen to be in. And so what we have, and this is critical here from a simple economic theory of supply and demand, there is a lot more demand than there is supply. It gives tremendous opportunity for those who want to actually explore coming into the trades. And then it also gives ample opportunity for those who want to set themselves apart from everybody else coming into the trades. It really is, in the 23 years that I have been in anyway, the most opportunistic time to get into the trades. If you've gotten let's say 10 years of experience already, well, then you look really good because you've got some experience and you've got longevity in front of you. But I've never seen the opportunity to the degree that it is. And so that's certainly one of the pros. As a matter of fact, it's the top one on our list, and for good reason. The rest of the pros matter, to be sure, but they matter less when you don't have opportunity. And I would say with we in the trades, if you don't know, then we have enough difficulty in just replacing those who are retiring. So the baby boomers who are retiring, they're going home, they're going to enjoy their golden years, and we have a difficult time replacing just them. Not to mention the manufacturing onshoring that we're seeing taking place. That's a whole topic in and of itself, but it's definitely a thing. There are multiple jobs that I'm aware of. These are larger jobs. There are multiple jobs going on right now and are slated to take place right now that make it, okay, well, not only do we got to replace those individuals going out, but we also have to, accommodate and deal with the industrial manufacturing ramp up. If COVID taught us nothing else, it taught us how fragile the global supply chain is. When you compound that with the problems you've got in the Middle East and the Suez Canal, and then with the fact that China's demographics don't paint a really good picture as far as population, and on top of that, you look at the infrastructure investment that the United States is currently looking to get involved in, already has, and is looking and projecting to look at taking place. You have what I can surmise is about 15 to 20 years of robust work. I will not make the statement that it's going to be in your backyard, but I will make the statement that it is 15 to 20 years of robust work. It's pretty stellar to see, as a matter of fact. And so at the top of the list on the pro side, you have the supply and demand. Following that is going to be what I have called it's good pay and benefits. I wrote in the article, and I don't have any problem saying it here, I know guys in the field, and I don't mean guys that reside in metropolitan New York or somewhere else, like let's say Chicago. I know people here where I live in Virginia that just in their pocket, they're making $80,000. Some are making 90. I know people, and I've talked to multiple people by this time in 23 years of being in this trade. I have talked to hundreds of people at this point. Made it a point to actually talk to them. Hey, what's it like over where you're at? How is work? What type of work are you doing? What's it like recruiting people? I'm a curious person by nature. I want that curiosity slaked. So I'm sitting here asking these questions, and I have talked to numerous people in different fields, whether it's, someone's an electrician or a pipe fitter, someone could be a crane operator, etc. And I've asked them various questions. Hey, what's it look like for you? And what's it look like somebody coming in? What do they get when they get out of their apprenticeship, etc.? And all across the board, bar none, it's always good pay and benefits. And now let me talk about the good pay and benefits thing for a second, because I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I didn't enunciate it as well as I wanted to. When we talk about good pay and benefits, okay, there is a video, there's two videos, as a matter of fact, that kind of linked them into, do you need to go to college to get a good job? Now, the first one was this lady who was effectively saying, hey, look, my husband is in the trades. I got a master's degree. She doesn't say what it's in. She just says that that's the route that she went, and that her husband by mid-year will bring home, or net pay, double of what she grosses. And she said that by the end of the year, obviously, he will quadruple it. She is painting the picture for me, but let me take it a little further. We're going to talk down the line. I've got another podcast episode coming out, and we're going to talk about the benefits of being a union member and the various benefits that you get. And when you are young, and I'm talking to a lot of you young people now, when you are young, you think you're indestructible. I know, because I was there. You think, okay, well, I feel like, I'm pumped full of vinegar and piss. I can do whatever I want to. And you'll be on the job site. Old timer will tell you, hey, look, don't jump off that truck, man. You're hurting my knees watching it. You think you're indestructible. We know you're not. I have never, ever met someone. I have never met someone in the entire time that I have been working, and I've met people who were 50 when I first got in, 60 when I first got in. And I met people who were my counterparts as far as age when I first got in. I have never met someone who said, I wish that I could have had more money in my pocket throughout that time period. Every single person that I have ever met has always said, either A, I'm grateful for the benefits that I get, or B, I wish that I would have saved more for retirement. Now, the retirement component is an entire podcast episode all by itself. But one thing that we don't focus on as much, as at least in my mind, because so many people are like, give it to me on the hip, give me the money in the pocket, give me the money in the pocket. We don't talk about enough, at least from my perspective, the benefits that you get. No matter what trade you're in or, whatever area you're in, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about the retirement, and we don't talk about health insurance. Now, health insurance is actually what I want to pull out of this. And the reason why is because you may or may not know, but 67%, so that's two-thirds of the bankruptcies in this country are from medical debt. Now, if that isn't alarming enough, I don't know what it is, but let's take it a step further. Two-thirds of that, so two-thirds or 67% of that 67% were from people who had medical insurance. So what that means then is that two-thirds of those people who claimed bankruptcy from medical actually had medical insurance. They didn't have enough. And you think you have enough. And so when you hear talking points about individuals who denounce, it's a whole different podcast episode or a whole different discussion altogether about why healthcare is what it is. It's not what I want to get into, because I want to deal with the reality. The reality is when people come together and they say, okay, look, we want healthcare benefits and we want robust healthcare benefits, the ones that come to mind right off the bat are the UPS workers. My sister-in-law actually works for UPS, and my brother was telling me how fantastic their health insurance is. Well, people can see, hey, look, our health insurance is wrought. Our health care system in general is wrought with problems. And if you want any other indication that from a young person and a young person's perspective that you should seriously take health insurance as one of the best benefits that you'll ever have, all you need to do is look at the number of people who have been vaccine injured. I'm not talking about ones that are reported because the regulatory agency has been captured. I'm talking about the young people that the young people that somebody that has an autoimmune disease, or somebody who has been injured. Sometimes it's in the form of autism or some other form. Young people are not as healthy as they were, and there's a multitude of factors that are contributing to that, lifestyle and whatnot. But good pay and benefits are worth their weight in gold. And I know of multiple trades that are offering good pay and benefits. And it makes perfect sense when the construction industry as a whole has to compete with multiple other industries, including the industry of making money online, which has crept up. And it has become massive in 25 years. The industry itself has to think outside the box about how to recruit, attract, and retain top talent for the long run. And I suspect that you're going to see good pay and benefits increase. All right. Number 3, honest work. Now, honest work is it's something that a lot of people don't really take into consideration. But honest work is something that most people just legitimately take for granted. I had a friend of mine, he had a sticker on the back of his windshield and it said, dirty hands, clean money. It's the ability to sleep at night, if you want the truth about it. I'm able to, if you want. So within the honest work frame, let's look at it like this. I am able to provide for my family, me by myself. And one of the reasons why I sit here and talk to multiple people online and face-to-face about the benefits the trades bring and the things that they should be trying to do is because I am already ahead. I am already doing this or this or this. And I am telling you that you can do it. And so I'm not telling you something that I'm not doing or that I'm unsure of you being able to do. And this idea of honest work, I think, is a lot of people, even if it comes up in conversation, okay, well, that was for a time gone by. And I'm not convinced that that's the case. I think there's something very poetic and something that we should actually celebrate when we can say, okay, I'm doing an honest day's work. And the exchange of labor, right? I'm selling my labor. That's basically what I'm doing. In exchange for that, I get to look and see, I've done good. see progress. I can see things being done, and I don't have to sear my conscience, from an honest day's work. And work satisfaction, number 4, is hot on the heels. Now, work satisfaction is, you'd have to talk, if you're unaware of what this is. When you talk to people in an office environment, and I'm fully and well aware of this, when you talk to people in an office environment, the thing that you find out most is the level of job satisfaction goes down. And this is in comparison to those in the field. The overwhelming majority of individuals out in the field have job satisfaction. And I suspect that there's multiple reasons, but I suspect the one that lends credibility to this point is that I can look back at the end of the day when I'm on the job and I can see something physically being done. And that helps me when I leave work at the end of the day to go home. I can know that on point number 3, that, I've done an honest day's work, and that number 4, I've got a measure of work satisfaction because I can actually see the work being done. And when you look online, I had not a podcast episode, excuse me. I had an article that was talking about job satisfaction and how there are so many people who do a job that they're unfulfilled. It's unsatisfying to them. And they could be doing a job, maybe, depending on what they wanted to do, but they could be doing a job that maybe makes them more fulfilled. They're scared to get into something else, or they're very comfortable, right? Complacency is the enemy of advancement. And so, but in the trades, the pros and cons of the trades, right? In the trades, I have talked to multiple people who have work satisfaction. Now, let's take work satisfaction a step further. If your father or mother or brother, uncle, whatever, friends, if you know somebody in the trades, I guarantee you'll be driving around to say, you see that building? I helped put that up. You see that building? I helped wire that up. But you see that building? I did this on this. I did that on that. It's pride. You can walk around and legitimately see something that you have worked on and say, well, I've done this, I've done that. Do you know what the pride is like to be able to say, well, I put that roller coaster up, or I put that bridge up, the one we're on right now, I put that bridge up, I put that building up over there. And there are what we would consider once in a lifetime jobs that are out there. They're bigger, they're more ambitious, they're larger, and there are multiple projects like that coming out. Ford Blue Oval is a prime example. It's an entire campus out there in Western Tennessee, out there near Memphis. It's massive. And people that walk off of that job get to say, well, I built that. And that was a large infrastructure project. You think people that built the Golden Gate Bridge and, and the like, other really large people that built the Hoover Dam, they could sit here and say, well, I built that. Or I had, back in the past, I did that. I worked on that. I was able to invest honest day's work, and I walked away with work satisfaction at the end of the day as well as the end of the job. So it's a golden thing, right? There's tremendous work satisfaction in the next probably 2 decades easily that I can see in the first place. Number five, skills for life. It would not surprise me one bit to learn that a project manager or somebody like that is bringing in other people to come and help him do whatever he might need to do around the house or the like. But when you're in the trades and you're in there for any amount of time, you know what you find, you know what you end up doing? I mean, to be blunt, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this happen. You end up bartering your skills for somebody else's. Hey, you come over here and help me with this, and I'll help you with this. You know, an electrician friend, hey, will you help me wire this up while I go over here, and then we'll come over to your house and I'll weld this up for you, or I'll, build this for you or whatever. You have skills. You have skills that you can use, and those skills are useful. And I have very rarely have I heard of somebody that had to go out and hire, a whole crew, other people from other crafts to actually come and do work at their home. They end up bartering things. It's pretty interesting to see. And I'll give you a case in point. In my own family, because I've said this before on the podcast, my own family is a family cut true and true for the trades. I'm an ironworker by trade. My other brother, the younger one next to me, 4 years, he's a pipe fitter by trade, pipe fitter plumber. Our youngest brother is a high voltage lineman. And through that, I know other people who can wire houses. I've got it all covered. If I want to do work, I know carpenters, I know crane, I know every craft. I know people from every craft. If I need to get things done, I can get things done. I don't have a planer at my house yet. Imagine that. I'm an ironworker. I like to play around with wood in my own home. I don't have a planer, but I can easily give my brother a piece of wood and say, get this taken care of for me. Can you get it planed and then bring it back to me? Because he happens to work with somebody who has one. And guess what? It happens every time. If I wanted to do something different, I could sit here and say, hey, can you get this for me or this for me? And he'd say, yeah, we'll take care of that. If I needed some plumbing issues, which I have in the past, I've called my brother up and he said, yeah, I'll take care of it. This idea of skills for life, I think, has been greatly diminished in the pursuit of going to college to get a good job. And it's been detrimental, as far as I'm concerned, for the image of the trades. You are building skills that you need for the rest of your life. Again, and I'll leave it with this, multiple other industries can go away tomorrow, and we're going to find a way to survive. But we're not going to find a way to survive without those who are actively pursuing and putting in the time into the trades. We have to have that industry carrying forward. So you're going to get those skills for life, all right? Number 6, let's see, hands-on. Again, another thing that has been greatly diminished, and I'm sad to say it has often just as much come from those of us inside the trades as those outside. Hands-on. There is something serene about working with your hands. There's something about creating something. There's something about looking back and saying, I, with my own 2 hands, helped to make this or this or this. And it has been often denigrated, this concept that working with your hands is any less noble. Let me tell you now, and I'm not standing on a rooftop, but I am figuratively, there is nobility in working with your hands. It's one of the reasons why people report high job satisfaction in the trades. There's nobility in working with your hands, all right? Hands-on is where it's at. And unfortunately, when you look at all that's being created, somebody's having to do it. And those individuals get that sweet, sleep at night because they walk away and everything's compiled. They're doing honest work, job satisfaction. They got skills for life, and then they're hands-on, very tactile in nature. And many of us are. We like to sit here and jump on in and begin to do something. And when we're doing something, that's when we learn. We learn the most anyway. And so this idea that you get to be hands-on with this is pretty interesting. And I've seen it manifest multiple times. I've watched individuals as the light bulb has come on, as it were, when we were teaching or they're learning on the job. And when they're hands-on, they're like, I can see. It makes sense. It's clicking, and they have this, for lack of a better term, they have this joy. There is a joy that is irreplaceable when you put somebody in a cubicle, if you will. It's pretty remarkable, actually. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 7, ingenuity possibilities. I don't know how many times I've seen this, but it's been a lot. I have watched fellow tradesmen look at a problem, think about it for a little bit. They might talk it out with other people or they might internalize it. But I have watched them think about a problem, analyze it, look at it, maybe take some notes, write some stuff down. And I have watched as they have come up with solution after solution after solution. Now, the old saying is that necessity is the mother of invention. I would argue that some of the most amazing things that I have seen have come from tradesmen trying to figure problems out. It's of necessity. I need to figure this problem out so that I can move forward. I need to look at it. I need to take care of it. Or maybe I need to create something. And I've seen this as well. I've got an issue or there's a process or whatever, and I need to take care of this process. Okay, well, what can I do to shorten this time period up? Or what can I do to take care of this issue? What can I do to make my life easier? To be blunt, what can I do? And I have watched, and I've kind of starstruck almost with individuals who have come up with something that has the ability then to take care of whatever it happens to be, the problem, whatever if it makes my job easier, if it makes it to be able to be accomplished faster. If we can take care of this issue and shorten the amount of time we're doing a specifically dangerous task, whatever it happens to be. I've been pretty amazed at individuals and the ability to possess ingenuity and use it. That's the important part, is that the trades, it seems to me anyway, that the trades are one of the last places where people can actually use ingenuity. Because when you use ingenuity, what you are actually doing is you're bringing the human element back in to the mix. And that's what most people try to take out. Well, most companies, most HR policies and whatever. If I remove the human element, institute managerial practices and processes, then my attempt is to remove as much of the human element as possible. And what the trades present you, is the ability to possess and use ingenuity. It's pretty remarkable. All right, number 8, and I leave off with this one in the pro category. I am not stuck in a cubicle. Now, I cannot. I've talked to multiple people over the years who the idea of sitting in a cubicle all day long and churning out drivel drives them nuts. And it's pretty remarkable to me, the fact that we don't capitalize on that. Like, we don't say, okay, well, you don't want to be stuck in a cubicle. Well, let me tell you what you've got, bud. You want to be outside. You want to be in the sunshine. You want to get some of that vitamin D, and you want to be moving. You don't want to be stuck in a cubicle. You don't want to feel like you're in a dead end job. You don't want to feel like you're in an office environment all day long. Well, the trades, one of the significant pros from the trades category is that you are not stuck in a cubicle. You're not stuck in a cubicle. You are out and about all day long. And I should have probably, kind of made an addendum to this, but one of the additional things about not being stuck in a cubicle is also that even though let's say you're an iron worker, and iron work kind of looks the same if you're slinging steel. If you're doing reinforcing, then it's going to look the same. If you are, you're doing ornamental work, you're fabricating, whatever. But the job sites usually change as well, which adds it takes being not stuck in a cubicle to the next level. And that's a beautiful thing, because some people, it sounds like purgatory to sit in a cubicle all day long. The last pro that just popped in my head while I was talking to you, I'm not even sure if it's on the website, but maybe I need to amend it, is because of the first one, supply and demand. I should have said that there's advancement opportunities. So what happens with a large generation like the baby boomers, when the baby boomers begin to vacate out of their positions because they're retiring en masse, the Gen Xers are a smaller generation. And so, yes, they do fill in those positions, or at least some of them. But if you've got any amount of experience and you're a millennial, millennials are the biggest generation coming up behind them. Well, then that means that you have the potential to fill in some of those positions and stay there for years to come, or at least, be grounded in, your high, like say a foreman, general foreman, superintendent, and move on up the ladder because they're not filled with somebody who's been there for 40 years. That's what the Gen Xers are facing. So there's that part of the supply and demand as well. All right. So those are the pros, right? And just to recap them really fast, we're talking about supply and demand, as far as just filling in vacancies and the construction industry growth that's going to be continual for a while, a good long while, as a matter of fact, the ability then to obviously move up within the ranks. There's good pay and benefits. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I know plenty of people who make a great living in the trades. There's honest work. I think we discount honest work too much. Work satisfaction. Many of us don't even consider work satisfaction when thinking about what we want to do for the rest of our life. In the pursuit of opportunity, maybe we ought to seriously put that in the back of our minds. Skills for life. I'm going to learn some skills for life that I can then use elsewhere, right? It's very hands-on, and so we're using our tactile nature, right, to our advantage. We have ingenuity possibilities. We have the ability to be inventive, if you will. And rounding it out is not being stuck in a cubicle. Now, before I move on, if there is another pro that you think deserves to be listed either in the article or on the podcast as an addendum, please let me know. And maybe I'll be convinced, maybe I won't be, but I won't know unless somebody actually has one and decides to share it. So let's get into the cons. Now, let me preface the cons with this. The cons are they're a combination of the actual cons and the perceived cons. Now, when I initially wrote the article, I was thinking to myself, okay, there are people out there who think certain things about the trades from a stigma perspective. Well, let me address those cons. They're not even thinking about the pros. So I can lay the pros out as they are. But when it comes to addressing the cons of the construction industry, well, let me lay out the real ones, and then let me lay out the perceived ones, and let me deal with that as well. Because a lot more people are probably prone to see the cons than they are the pros. So let's deal with that, all right? And I'll tell you which ones I believe are, which ones I know are real, and which ones I believe are perceived, all right? Starting up, number one. Depending on the trade that you pick, it's hard physical work. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's be honest about this. We've already talked about it being hands-on, and it's honest work, right? And we're not stuck in a cubicle. It is hard physical work. And this should make sense. If you are a bricklayer, for example, or if you are an iron worker, the nature of our jobs is much more physical than, say, being a crane operator. And, I'm not trying to slight crane operators. I've got good friends who are crane operators. I'm just saying the physical nature of the jobs are what they are. And so certain trades are more physical than others, but they're all physical in some form. And because that's the case, there are dandelions who have decided to try and enjoy the trades, and they've kind of washed out because they have been unprepared for even the slightest bit of physical work. Now, physical work being what it is, it ought to be a con, to be blunt with you, because you're going to get physical exertion that many, many people do not get in the office. I mean, the body, and I don't know this for a fact, but I was listening to a podcast the other day where somebody made a comment that the human body was designed, and if you look in the historical perspective, you can see this played out, to be outside for 85% of the day. Meaning you went outside and you worked and you did whatever, whether you were gardening, whether you were keeping up your home, whether you were working out in the field from an agregarial perspective, you're out farming all day long. You're out being physically active. You are always physically active. And so you're always out there. Well, that meant, to be honest, more physical health. Your physical health was better, bar none. I would be hard pressed to have somebody convince me that somebody 50 years ago was unhealthier than we are today. They were more physically active, amongst other things. But one of them for sure was that they were more physically active. There's nothing wrong with it. But to be blunt and to be fair to the comparison, it is definitely a con to some people. It's hard physical work. Being an iron worker can be hard. If you're in the rebar patch and you're tying rods all day long, well, it can be hard physical work. Are you going to be strong because of it? Yes. But does that dismiss the fact that it's hard physical work? No, it does not. Same thing with somebody that's going to lay some brick, or somebody that's going to, you know, be a pipe fitter, for example. And my brother, he would tell me it'd be wintertime and he's crawling underneath the piers, on the Navy bases working on pipes. That's hard physical work. And then, of course, which leads into, because I mentioned that he's in the winter, leads to my next point, which is I'm outside in the elements. So that's the secondary con. Often coupled together with the first one. I'm going to do hard physical work at times. I mean, let's be blunt. There are, and if you talk to anybody that's been in the trades, they're going to tell you some days the mindset and thought process is, I cannot believe I'm getting paid to do this because of the, whatever it is you happen to be doing. It's an easy day or two or whatever. And then there are other days where you're like, I am not getting paid enough for this bull crap. I need to get paid more. We say it all comes out in the wash. We want to, we take the good with the bad. We run with it, right? We get paid well, back to good pay and benefits, right? And we say, okay, well, I need to deal with this. But outside in the elements, we might have rainouts. There are days where we have to deal with inclement weather, depending on what we're doing, whether we're working under a roof or we're actually creating the structure for the roof. And for those of you who might be involved in the industrial aspect and you aren't necessarily having to succumb to outside in the elements, you know what it's like to be somewhere and it's 30 degrees outside and it's 30 degrees in the building or in the compound you are. There's no real difference. Maybe you're 20 degrees, maybe you're 10 degrees, whatever. There's no real difference. And so you're outside in the elements. And it's these two cons combined. The hard physical work that is the reality of those of us in the trades, as well as being outside in the elements, that is the 1-2 punch that usually takes out a lot of different people that might have considered the trades otherwise. But I need to be blunt and we need to be honest. This is what you're going to experience at some point, somehow, some way, if you're going to give the trades a shot. It's just what it is. You need to understand that and realize it. Now, obviously, we have work satisfaction to compensate for it, and multiple people. I mean, I know so many people who make a good living. All right, and they sleep sweet at night because they are satisfied with their careers. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we had hard physical work and we're outside in the elements. But there is a pro to being outside in the elements, if you will. I'm inclined to believe, I don't know that 85, I said earlier 85% of the time outside. I'm not entirely sure that I haven't put my mind and tried to wrap it around 85%. I don't really know if like that high of a percentage, but if somebody said at least half of the day, that would make sense. If somebody said 70%, to me, it would make sense. And one of the extra benefits that you get to being outside, and it depends on where you're at, but if you're outside, you get some vitamin D. This is one of the reasons why you end up getting sick in the wintertime, because you're not getting as much vitamin D because more skin is covered up from the sun. And there is a very real concern with outdoor air quality, depending on where you're at, from a heavy industrial perspective. So too, do we need to discuss poor indoor air quality and the fact that many people come inside and they sit down and they don't move all day. And what happens? They gain weight and their physical health declines. And so, yes, hard physical work and being outside in the elements is the 1-2 punch that usually takes some people out, but there is a silver lining in each one. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about them. All right. Number 3, it's often dirty. There have been times that I have come home and I have been just completely dirty. There are days that I come home and I am not, but there were days that I would come home and I was. And my wife would say, you smell like a machine, whether it's, dust or dirt or, there's a little bit of residual oil from whatever I happen to be working around. She would say, you smell like a machine. That was just the way that she wanted to describe the smell of being dirty from work that day, right? Those of us who weld know what it's like to come home and smell of welding fumes. Consequently, it's the same thing for those who have worked in fast food before. You know what it's like to come home and smelling like grease. You've been around it all day. So you know what it's like to do a hard day's work. You know what it's like to be outside in the elements, and we often know what it's like to be dirty. And some jobs are dirtier than others. Some of our jobs are more physical in nature than others. If you work in the pulp and paper industry, or if you're over there, let's say, dealing with coal, look, you're going to be dirty. And I mean dirty, dirty. I know guys who have a secondary set you'd have a secondary set, washer and dryer, and they wash their work clothes separate from what their family does because they don't want to combine them. And it's only used for their stuff. I know guys who will take their stuff to the laundromat because they don't want to bring the stuff home. Whatever flavor it happens to take, it doesn't really matter to me. The reality is, yes, there are times when we are often dirty. And it's amazing to me the number of people who fear getting dirty when it comes to going to work. It adds, in my opinion, to the job satisfaction part of the whole thing. But it's a con to some people, and I need to add that out here. Okay, work instability. Now, work instability. The concept with work instability, for those of you who go to the office, maybe it doesn't ring a bell to you because you go to the same place every day. And the same is true, obviously, for those who go to an industrial setting. You're going to go and you're manufacturing something or whatever. But for those of us who are in the trades, when we go to, let's say, build a building or work on something, the day that we step foot on a job, we're beginning to work ourselves out of one. At least that one there. I'm going to build this building. I'll make it up. I'm going to build this 30-story building. The day that we break ground is the day that we begin to work ourselves out of a job. Because what's going to happen? When that job is done, what's likely to take place? I'm on to the next one. So that job is done, and I'm out of a job figuratively because I'm not working on that one. Now, but I'll take work instability a little further. Work instability is, there's a term for those of us in the trades that we know, and we repeatedly say it: feast or famine. And what that means is when it's feasting time, we work. We work the shutdowns. We worked 7/12s. We worked 6/10s. We're working all this overtime. 6/10s mean 6 days a week, 10 days. 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, or 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That's what I mean when I say 7/12, 6/10s. And we're working all this overtime because it's time to feast. And hopefully we're being smart with our money and putting it aside because of the times of famine. And there are times when work is not as plentiful in our area. The economy does this. So does the stock market. And the whole thing is obviously predicated on the fact that, is there work? Where's the work at? That's where I want to go. Now, those of you who may be listening and you live in a small town, you intuitively know this to be true because your small town has very little opportunity. The larger a metropolitan area is, the more opportunity it has, and the more likely you are to continue and stay working in the trades. But work instability is a very real thing for some of us, so I need to make sure to paint it out. Now, earlier I said that in a supply and demand funnel at the very top of the pros, I talked about just replacing those in the trades that are retiring. And the tune, we're about 500,000 short right now, right? Well, when you factor in about 10 years that we're looking at about 2 to 3 million deficit of people in this industry, and then you look at the manufacturing onshoring, and you look at this infrastructure that we're looking to get multiple jobs done in infrastructure work, increasing the industrial footprint, etc. Not only is that a pro in the supply and demand, but it's also a silver lining when we talk about work instability, because I would suggest that we're going to see a lot less work instability. Yeah, it'll be confined to, various regions. But historically, what would happen is if you were in a region that you would move, you would move to a metropolitan area so that you can make money. Now the interesting part that I have yet to really study is you're living in a smaller town. How does that look for you, right? When you can make money online, there are people who actually make money and live in the middle of nowhere. Kudos to them. But from a skilled trades perspective, a lot of people end up, I don't want to say traveling all the time because that's not true. I know people who go to bed every night in the same bed, and they're not hitting the road. They're tucking their kids in. They're going home and seeing their spouse. They're doing their hobbies or whatever. But the reality is, I know multiple people who like to actually travel, and traveling, work instability I should also compare it. The other side of that coin is work robust. Work is robust, and therefore we need other people to travel from other areas to take care of, help us to fill in and take care of what we got going on. But it can be perceived as a con by many, so it needs to make the list. Here is one. This next one here is it's a perceived one, so I want to make sure I clear the air for that. Lower pay and benefits. Now, I already said one of the pros of this was good pay and benefits, and that's certainly to be true. I know multiple people who make a great living in the trades. They make good money. Now, their behavior might reflect otherwise because they make piss poor financial decisions, but they still make good money and have good benefits. Conversely, however, there are contractors out there, okay, that view you, the iron worker, the electrician, the pipe fitter, whatever, as a tool. You're not a resource, not the most valuable resource. You are a tool, and I will work you like a tool. And when that tool is dull, I will throw you away and get another one. And I will also exploit you. I will tell you, for example, 1099 is the way to go. You want to be your own boss. Unless you have a company and you are working for multiple subs, you're subbing for multiple people, and you set your own schedule and you are doing whatever you're wanting to do. The idea that a 1099 is where you want to go it's you're being exploited is really what's going on. All right. As a matter of fact, this just popped in my head. This is another podcast episode that I hope to do one time. Nonetheless, the point that I'm making is that there are people who will exploit you to pay you less. And that's where this idea, at least part and parcel, that low pay and benefits comes at. It's certainly not true for the skilled tradesmen and women that I know. All right. I know people who have made a good living, have sacrificed their bodies and the physical nature of things. They've built up some strength. And then when they go to retire, they've got good retirement. There's a lot of people who don't, and they make poor choices early on. I'm indestructible, and I'm going to go work for this company because this is the type of work I want to do, as opposed to weighing everything out, all the benefits in the scales. And they go, okay, well, and also, and this is one, I'll give you a prime example of how this can be true. I had a friend of mine who told me that he used to work at a nuclear power plant, and before nuclear power plants instituted one day off in 7 days, so you couldn't work 7 days. You could work 7 days straight, and then all of a sudden they began to look at a bunch of different evidence and said, no, we're not going to allow you to work 7 days. You're going to step it back. We're going to do 6 days. We're going to limit the number of hours because we don't want burnout. And when there's burnout, people make mistakes. In addition to that, what they also decided to implement was drug testing. And they said, okay, and this is probably 25, 30 years ago, maybe even more than that now, we're going to institute drug testing. And he told me back then there were guys who left there to go work for another contractor somewhere else for $10 an hour less. And the reason why is because they wanted to smoke weed. They wanted to be able, and some people wanted to do more drugs, but they wanted to smoke weed. I want to be able to snort coke. I want to be able to do crack, whatever. I want to be able to live life rough and not be drug tested. And those contractors are licking their lips, rubbing their hands together, going, I will happily exploit you in this regard. Okay? That's the reality. Is that there are people, I have talked to people who have come out from on the other side of this and said, yeah, I've seen it day in and day out. They know that this person does drugs. They know that this person is a layout artist, is coming in late, whatever, but they feel like they're getting what they pay for, which is very low. So that's one way that lower pay and benefits can be happening. But you cannot compare lower pay and benefits to those that I know who work in this trade because they make good money. They do. I know guys who make good money. I know of millionaires in their retirement package. I know people who are millionaires in their annuity funds, which is the union's 401k, if you will. Loosely anyway. I know guys who have paid off homes. I know guys who have everything that they have paid off because they've been very smart with their behavior. And then I also know guys, I mean, there's a statistic that I don't have it directly in front of me, but I was listening to a podcast just the other day that said a third of the people who make 6 figures a year live paycheck to paycheck. Well, at this particular point, let's talk about behavior and not circumstances. So one of the perceived cons, and it's not a reality and we can't broad brush it, is, okay, well, people who work in the trades get lower benefits. Well, you're looking at somebody who's being exploited, not somebody who's seeking opportunity, okay? So let me just clear the air. And the last one, and this one really gets my goat, but from a cons perspective, people in the trades are often viewed, and this is from the stigma. You see somebody who is working with their tools, and they say, okay, well, this guy over here, he must be less intelligent because he's working with his tools. Okay. That sounds like an assumption problem that you're making. I've already talked about ingenuity possibilities in the pro side of the house. I have some of the smartest people that I have ever met have been in the trades. Routinely, when you look at what we would call, formal academia, the individuals who are the class clowns are usually exceptionally bright, and they're very tactile in nature. What's really going on in a lot of ways is that they're bored. They're looking for something to do. They're looking for something to occupy their time and their space. And the trades often present a measure of ingenuity for them to exercise their minds in this regard. This is a lie. Now, I'm talking about skilled trades, which means skilled labor. I'm not talking about general labor. Unfortunately, there are many times where the two seem to be confused with one another. And for those of you who are not in the trades, you are often the ones who make the confusion. You confuse it. They're not. The skilled trades, they're going to take time. And I mean, I'm 23 years in, right? And I don't know every single thing about my trade to this day. I can still learn a lot more. As a matter of fact, the day that you figure that you have not learned something about your trade, or you can't learn something about your trade, it's usually the day that you become exceedingly dangerous because now you're arrogant. But the idea that skilled tradesmen and women are less intelligent is not true at all. And what's remarkable about those that get into the trades is that they often exhibit the opposite. I have seen guys come in and they have a tenacity. They're very intelligent, and they use that experience they get out in the field and then start their companies. I've helped several of them along the way. I have communicated with multiple people who were perceived as less intelligent. Why are you going into the trades? That's not a smart move. You must not be smart. Why are you going into the trades? Well, then they turn out to be business owners, and they used the time in the trades from an experiential perspective. And what they did was now they're a millionaire. And as a business owner, I know people like this. So the idea, it's a misnomer. It's a lie. It's not true. But the perception, because of the stigma against the trades, is there that people in the trades are just somehow less intelligent. I have met some verified geniuses. in the trades. They just want to be able to exercise a level of humanity. And there are fewer and fewer places out there where you can do this. The trades happen to be one of the best places where you can exercise a level of your humanity at. So rounding out the cons list, so let's let me reiterate what they were, and then we'll end the podcast. Okay. The pros, we started with supply and demand, not just for bodies, but also positionally, there's going to be supply and demand. There is obviously good pay and benefits. I'm telling you now, I know so many people for good pay and benefits. One of the things that I hope to do on this podcast is actually bring people on to talk about how it's helped them out. Honest work, that goes without saying. I think it needs to be exalted. Work satisfaction. You work some interesting and truly once-in-a-lifetime jobs, skills for life. There's hands-on, tactile nature being exhibited. We have ingenuity possibilities that are out there. I love the fact that we can sit here and practice a level of ingenuity with what we do, and I'm not stuck in a cubicle all day long. I can go outside, breathe the fresh air, and feel like a human being, all right? The cons list, we talked about the hard physical work of the trades, some more than others, outside in the elements, how it can often be dirty, all right? Work instability, we need to talk about that a little bit more and what it looks like, but work instability nonetheless. Lower pay and benefits. This is a perceived one, not a real one, except unless you're being exploited. And then lastly, rounding out the cons, was perceived as less intelligent. It is a direct result of the stigma that has been leveled against the trades for 4 decades now. And there we have it. A podcast episode that sums up, not in a short one, I'm looking at the timer here, I'm 54 minutes in right now, at the pros and cons of the skilled trades. This is episode number, I believe it's 8. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Ironworker podcast. I'll see you on the next one.